Hey guys, it's me Nalthazar, or you can just call me Michael. And today I'm starting a new series called Planeswalker Showcase. And with this, I want to go ahead and take a look at most of the usable Planeswalkers in the game and showcase how to build around them. So the first one I'm going to be showcasing is Liliana Defiant Necromancer. I thought it would be nice to start with one of the original Planeswalkers, and I happen to think that she's the best of the original Planeswalkers. And so she's who I wanted to start with. So the first thing to keep in mind about Liliana Defiant Necromancer is that her health pool is terrible and her mana gains are terrible. So out the gate, she doesn't look like she has a lot going for her based on those two features. But if you take a look at her abilities, she actually has a fair bit more going for her than you might have initially expected. That first ability, Corrupt, that makes you discard the last two cards in your hand and your opponent discards the first and last card, is an incredibly potent ability. It has a very low loyalty cost at 6, so it's very easy to use it frequently. And you get to choose which cards you're losing, and with your opponent losing their first card in hand, they're going to ultimately be losing a ton of mana. Now, I know that Liliana doesn't do this at lower levels, so you do need to level her up in order to be able to do that. And then finally, that bottom ability, Raise Dead, is another incredible ability. It synergizes very well with the Corrupt ability in that when you're dumping cards out of your hand, you can be dumping creatures and then raise them on back, which is really cool. Also, when you level her up, the loyalty cost of Raise Dead goes down. Now, I'm going to go over two different options and how to build around her. The first option is for beginners. So if you're newer to the game, I made a deck here, and I'll go over deck building with her that is relatively on the easy side to make. I know that in order to have every single one of the uncommons to make this deck, it's probably going to be a little bit on the challenging side if you're new. But it gives you an idea of something to shoot for, and since the cards are uncommon, hopefully it won't be too hard for you to be able to make a deck like this. Now, I do know that Memorial to Folly is a rare on the bottom, and I do know that Dragon's Hoard is a mythic on the bottom. You'll hear this throughout the series, but cards like Dragon's Hoard that are rewards from events are really easy to get because they're rewards from events, and so as a result of that, I'm not counting this as a mythic rarity. That is, it's not a card that's difficult to obtain. Now, I know I'm cheating a little bit with Memorial to Folly, but unfortunately, there aren't very many black gem conversion options at the uncommon level that I think are very useful at this moment in time, so I'm going to go ahead and use that one for this video. Now, we took a look at her abilities, and we're going to be spamming that Corrupt ability, that first one, quite often. And so I immediately wanted to build a deck that utilized some really strong cards and that also would synergize with her abilities. You want to make sure that you're building around your Planeswalker. So the first card that came to mind for me was Urgoros the Empty One. Urgoros is excellent with the first ability in Urgoros. You can put your opponent in a position where they just really can't do anything for the rest of the game. It's an incredibly unfortunate position to be in. If you've gone up against this, it can be a little bit on the frustrating side to go up against because it's a pretty easy lock. So you get your opponent down to 0 cards with abilities like Corrupt and with Urgoros attacking every turn. And then once they're down to no cards, they're still discarding every turn. So it really sucks for them. Now, another nice thing about Urgoros is that he provides you with some card advantage. Now, I want to go out and just get it out of the way. Black is by far the worst color in Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest at this moment in time, both in Standard and in Legacy. In Paper Magic, Black gets the ability to search for cards in the library, and it has some really cool abilities, but that hasn't translated in Puzzle Quest, and unfortunately, Black has the weakest offering of creatures, and largely the weakest offerings of spells for card advantage. So that puts it in a pretty rough spot. Additionally, not very good mana gains, at least in my opinion. I know that there's gem conversion that you can do, but Black's kind of gotten the short end of the stick so far. That could change. So Urgaros is one of those free cards that's going to give you card advantage. Very useful. You'll see it actually in the advanced deck too. The Eldest Reborn is an incredibly good card. We want to maximize the discard ability, and this is not only going to be destroying your opponent's creature, but it's going to then make your opponent discard 2 cards, and then it's going to let you steal things from the graveyard. This is an incredibly potent card. It is very powerful at 14 mana. And then from there, I went, okay, when you're deck building, you need to have removal. And while discard is a really cool feature to the deck, and the Eldest Reborn is a really cool feature, I want to make sure that I'm not only getting rid of creatures, but I'm getting rid of other things. And this is one of the things that's difficult for Black, is that Black doesn't have a lot of options to get rid of supports. So that's why I threw in Mortify. Not only can it destroy a creature, but it can also destroy enchantments, and there's some pretty nasty enchantment supports out there. And I threw in Status Statue. So Status is going to enable you to kill creatures by giving your own creatures Death Touch and Defender. Or alternatively, you can use the flip side to destroy artifact and enchantment supports, or if you want, creatures. It's got a lot of flexibility. It's a very useful card. Now, gem conversion is incredibly important. I've mentioned this. This is why Memorial to Folly and Dragon's Hoard are in here. And Dragon's Hoard serves the dual purpose of card advantage with drawing cards and gem conversion. Death Sprout is one of the best removal cards in Standard right now, because not only is it destroying a creature, but it's going to fetch a land and give it full mana, which lets you immediately put it on the battlefield. So you get to destroy a creature, and you get to put one of your gem conversion things down for 10 mana. That's a lot of value for 10 mana. Very, very useful. Now, I'm rounding it out with Ravenous Chupacabra. Not only is the idea of using a Chupacabra funny to me, but it destroys creatures. So that's pretty nice. It's an enter the battlefield. Goodbye, power. It's an enter the battlefield effect. So when you reanimate it in some way, say Liliana's third ability, it's going to come back and it's still going to kill a creature for you. So that's pretty useful. And now the final 2 things that I threw in here were just to help me kill a little bit faster, because none of these cards here really are doing damage so far. And those are Fell Spectre and Raider's Wake. Raider's Wake is going to make it so that the opponent loses 3 life every time they discard a card, and Fell Spectre is going to make it so your opponent loses 2 life whenever they discard a card. So if I get both of them down, the opponent's losing 5 life for every card they discard, and if we've also got Urgaros down, that's going to be them losing 5 life every turn, in addition to our attacking the opponent. So that's the beginner deck. Let's go ahead and use it in a quick match and get an idea for how it goes. Now, this is a beginner deck, and it's going to be going up against whatever cards this guy has. So obviously he's going to have some advantage, but yeah. So now I'm actually going to be disabling the 2 supports, because at the bottom we've got a 5 match, and I don't want to get the supports down and then potentially lose them. So you'll see that I'm just making the 5 matches first, because I don't want to lose shields on the supports if I don't have to. A nifty little thing. It's just a small bit of thing that you can do. So now I'm going to be able to get both gem conversion supports out, which is bonkers, and I'm going to be able to make Vraska discard a card here. I could use my first, but I don't want to use it yet. I'm actually hoping that I can use it potentially next turn, depending on what I see she's getting down. At this point, there's really not a great reason to do it. I don't really need to lose my Dragon's Hoard here. Unfortunately, I don't really need it either. But let's see, that's going to be card draw. So let's go ahead and see what we get. Now, getting the Chupacabra is nice. You want to have a lot of removal in your decks in general, because it enables you a heck of a lot of flexibility. And what I mean by having a heck of a lot of flexibility is that it's ultimately going to make it so that you don't have to sweat out the dangerous moments as much. You're going to run into them a lot less frequently. I'm going to point out that the gems that this match is offering me are amazing. You aren't normally going to be getting gem matches like this. So this is very atypical. Don't expect this. Now, here, I could just go ahead and remove both of the cards in his hand, which is actually what I'm going to do. I don't actually need either of the things that I have, and he's going to be losing life to the Spectre, and I'm going to be drawing cards anyways because I had the Dragon's Horde activated gem there at the bottom. I'm really not worried about losing 3 life because I'm just trying to build up to a point where I can lock the opponent down. Now, here, I don't want Vraska to be able to play whatever's in her hand. I have a very large store of cards. I don't need to use either of the 2 things there, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep corrupting. I've got enough mana, Planeswalker mana, that I'll be able to corrupt him again next turn, and so I'm actually just going to make a Planeswalker match to keep my Planeswalker mana going. Do I need to kill that thing? No, not really, but I'm in a position now where Vraska is pretty close to a complete lockdown. If we can just get Urgaros, we know that Vraska has nothing left in the tank. Eldest Reborn is going to be an excellent option against her, so if she does actually bring a creature down, not only is she going to lose it, but then she's going to be discarding even more cards, which is really unfortunate for her because she doesn't have a lot of room to be discarding cards right now. It's one of the great advantages of Liliana, and so at this point, really, you're seeing Liliana shine. This is a way that you can use her that is very powerful. Now, I've got the Fel Spectre. I actually kind of want to drop it if the game will let me, as I don't have an activated gem match that's going to draw me cards from the Dragon's Horde right now. So it won't, but that's okay. I know that I'm killing her slowly but surely right now, but not a big deal. She is likely going to die, right? She doesn't have a very good deck. That's just, there's not a lot of great cards that are coming out right now. And on top of that, she's getting locked down. So do I need the cards in my hand? Once again, no. I have an overabundance of Planeswalker mana. I don't want her to have cards. So I'm just going to keep being a monster and getting rid of her cards. Now, I know that I could have cascaded and used the Fel Spectre and not forced her to discard, and that would have been a bad thing, but not too big of a deal. Now, here I get to steal something. I'm going to take the Spider just because it's got the greatest the greatest power, and I just want to go ahead and take her down. So this is one of the disadvantages to running a deck of largely uncommons and commons and things like that. And I know it's unavoidable when you first start, I know. But it's just, it takes a little bit longer to get a confirmed kill. So just keep that in mind as you play. Now, what I'm trying to showcase here, obviously, is the strength of Liliana. I know that I've mentioned that, but you'll see that I'm just locking her down. She's not able to really do anything with all of my gem conversion, and with the really cheap costs of my cards, I'm able to go ahead and just play out my hand with the Dragon's Hordes I'm drawing. Getting Urgaros here is the final straw. There's nothing that Vraska is really going to be able to do at this point. For those of you that are like, hey, she could play something like Plague Wind. Yes, she could. But I'm going to go ahead and say that I doubt that she's going to get 16 mana in a turn to be able to do that. So I think she's kind of toast here. So we'll finish it out pretty quick like. We're going to get extra card draw because Urgaros is down, and when it makes Vraska discard, you get to then go ahead and draw. Vraska's going to go ahead and kill that Spider, but not a big deal because we're going to be hitting her for 8 this turn anyways. We don't even need to summon this Urgaros. And that's the match with the beginner deck. You'll see that I'm at Platinum, and I went up against another level 60 Planeswalker, and I lost a grand total of 8 health. So, not too bad. There are other options that you can use. Cursed Witch is a common from Dominaria. Fairly useful. You can use that card too, as that's going to make your opponent discard 2 for 8 and give you a creature, and it's an enter the battlefield ability, so you can use Liliana's Third, but is largely unnecessary. Now, I was tinkering around a lot with different Lilianas, and so unfortunately I did wind up losing a game earlier with a Liliana deck where I did not wind up putting in card advantage, and that was unfortunate. So here is my more advanced version. I am calling this the more advanced version because it includes mythics and masterpieces. The main differences to note, you'll see some similarities. So 5 of the cards are the same: Dragon's Horde, Memorial, Urgaros, Eldest Reborn, and Deathsprout. But I added Infinite Obliteration, which is effectively your first ability, Etrata, which is even more lockdown and one of the scarier cards in the game in my opinion, because every time she attacks, she exiles an opponent's creature. Notion Thief, who makes the lockdown even more real because there is now no way for your opponent to draw cards to refresh their hand, because if they can draw a maximum of 1 per turn, and Urgaros is going to be making them discard that card. Finale of Eternity is going to be board wiping your opponent if they do get anything down, and it's going to be giving you your creatures back. And Plague Wind is just unfriendly. So we're going to use this. We're up against a Sarkhan deck. Sarkhan is obviously a better Planeswalker than Liliana, but nonetheless, we're going to hope that we can take advantage of Liliana's abilities here and take Sarkhan down. Now, here's an interesting situation. I have Plague Wind in my hand, and based on what I've said before, I like to go ahead and make sure that I match up removal first, but because of the nature of this particular matchup, I actually want to get Urgaros down first. And I want to get Urgaros down first because in conjunction with Liliana's first ability, I want to be able to lock Sarkhan down. And I also really want to get Notion Thief down so that Sarkhan doesn't have a way of drawing. Sarkhan is a blue planeswalker, and blue has access to incredibly fun things like Blue Sun Zenith. Sarcasm, by the way. Very, very, very sarcasm. Now here I'm actually going to do something that you might think is a little bit odd. I'm going to be using my first and getting rid of my Etrata, but this is where I might wind up just reanimating her later on down the line. And as I mentioned before, I'm really just trying to put this game into a position where Sarkhan is going to be locked down. Now I have an incredible match at the bottom. It's going to do a whole bunch of cascading. It might even get me close to Notion Thief. It does give me Notion Thief. So that's great. The lockdown is almost complete. He summoned a gate, which is not even remotely scary. I don't even have to use my first ability now because he has only 1 card in his hand. So good for him. And I'm just going to keep charging up my Plague Wind. Now you might be saying, why not just charge up Etrata? He doesn't have anything, so it's not like you have to worry. Yeah, but like I said, I like to play it safe when I can. And yeah, so this is another game where you're now seeing Liliana at her best. This is very unfortunate for Sarkhan. If you have not run into a Liliana deck like this before, you're probably a little bit newer to the game because she's a very commonly used planeswalker in events, even though she's one of the Origins walkers. And it's because she's able to pull nonsense like this. Now, Sarkhan could eventually try and use his first ability, but it's not going to do anything for him because even if he used his first ability, I'm using her third, by the way, here. I know I'm only getting a Etrata out of it, but he's so locked down that there's really no reason for me to do anything else. So even if Sarkhan uses his first here, he's not going to draw the card. He's actually going to be giving it to me because of Notion Thief. And even if he did get a creature down, Etrata would be killing it. So there's really nothing that Sarkhan can do here. So I'm just going to go ahead and make quick matches so that the guys that I have out, and gals, of course, Etrata, and I don't know, maybe Urgaros, are going to go ahead and take this guy down. Now I'm just getting rid of cards from my hand that I don't need. I really don't need anything in my hand, to be honest, at this point, because Sarkhan is locked down. But when you build a good deck around one of your planeswalkers, you're going to be building one that is going to take advantage of their abilities, and it's going to be taking advantage of the cards that you can build around. And so this is an example of doing both of those things. There are a lot of cards that allow for discard. Fortunately, Urgaros is going to also simultaneously enable us to draw cards. And with stuff like Atrata, if they do wind up getting anything out, it's really not a big deal because they're just going to lose it. I know I didn't need to use the finale. It's just pouring salt on the wound. Poor Sarkhan. But not really. Sarkhan's a horrible, horrible man. And here we are. We beat Sarkhan. We lost no life. And so now you've gotten a chance to see Liliana in her beginner version and in her more advanced version. So the advanced version I made just so that those of you who don't have as big of collections, you can be like, oh, I really want to try and build toward this. And those of you who do have bigger collections, you can go ahead and try this deck out. So really quickly, to rehash, we're going to switch her out for just a moment. The beginner deck, really all just uncommons with one rare added and an event card. And the advanced one, definitely more advanced, a lot of mythics and masterpieces, but a really fun deck. Liliana is a really fun, and my battery is dying, cool. Liliana is a really fun planeswalker. She's got very strong abilities, so if you haven't taken a look at her, go ahead and take a look at her. I hope that this helped you out. I hope that you found this interesting, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.